Alrighty, so just like I always say, my advice to you always is when you have a comprehension passage that has questions that are going to be asked of you to answer at the end, I always say to read the questions first. That way you can take note of what you need to answer the questions as you read the passage. So, once again, reading comprehension passage, no matter what subject the comprehension passage is about, always make it a best practice to read the questions first. That way, as you read, you can keep track of information that will help you to quickly answer the questions once you get to them. So the questions are: number one, everything around us is made of A, liquids, B, matter, C, plasma, or D, gas. Number two, why does the author describe the balloon and inflatable pool toys filling up with air? A, in order to explain that it is impossible to observe the way gas moves around space. B, in order to explain that air is not made of atoms that take up space. C, in order to explain that air is made of atoms that take up space, even though air is invisible. Or D, in order to prove that these are fun objects to inflate. Number three, usually atoms move slower in solids than they do in liquids. Which evidence from the passage best supports this statement? A, solids, liquids, and gases can all undergo the process of diffusion. B, diffusion is the movement of particles from a higher concentration to a lower concentration. C, the atoms in gas move the fastest. D, atoms in solids are often more tightly packed than atoms in liquids and have less space to move around freely. 4. Based on the passage, the corner where a perfume is initially sprayed has A, has no concentration of perfume particles. B, has the same concentration of perfume particles as the rest of the room. C, a lower concentration of perfume particles than the other corners of the room. Or D, a higher concentration of perfume particles than the other corners of the room. What is this passage mainly about? A, matter and the properties it has in certain states. B, the process of diffusion. C, the different measurement scientists use to label materials. Or D, the inflation of balloons and pool toys. 6. Read the following sentences from the passage. Whatever the state of matter may be, all matter is made of tiny particles called atoms. These particles are too tiny to see with the naked eye. They're even too small to see with a regular microscope. If you line up 1,000,000 atoms next to each other, they will be as thick as a single piece of human hair. The author uses the example of a single piece of human hair to illustrate A, how atoms can be seen with a regular microscope, B, how tiny atoms actually are, C, how hairy atoms actually are, or D, how much they look like hair. 7. Choose the answer that best completes the sentence below. Scientists group materials together blank. It is easier to compare and study them that way. So, which one of those words fits in that sentence? A, however, B, but, C, although, or D, because. 8. Explain why atoms move at different speeds depending on whether they are in liquids or solids. 9. What is diffusion? Last but not least, 10. Explain whether smoke filling up a room is diffusion or not. So, as you read, look for information that is going to help you to answer these comprehension questions.